Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the Co-Star, the official newspaper of the Borough of Belmar, and the Asbury Park Press on November 21st, 2023, and notice of this meeting was posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building. Take roll call. Councilwoman Donovan? Here. Councilman McKinney? Here. Mayor Buckapusco?
Here.
Councilman Romero? Here. Councilman Levis?
Here. Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence for our men and women in the armed forces and our first responders. Thank you. Workshop. Just like to let the council know that residents will be receiving a letter in the mail probably next week sometime regarding it's from the DEP, the letter, and it has to do with an event that happened back in April, and the letter is fairly self-explanatory, but I'll go over the high points or low points, if you will, about the letter. Basically what happens is just, every 2 weeks the water gets tested, and the testing company comes in and monitors it. And that's in addition to our own water company employees testing the water. So what happened was back on April 25th, a test was done, and one of the levels in the actual pump tank or treatment plant was not where it should be. So they realized very quickly that it had to do with a pump, and that pump was replaced within 3 or 4 hours. Okay. 2 weeks went by, the monitor came in, tested the water, it was fine. Actually, the water was fine minutes after they replaced the pump. It was only out for 3 or 4 hours. What happened was, though, the DEP regulation says that the DEP needs to be notified within 9 days of this event. Well, everyone thought that since it was remedied, there was no need to notify DEP. So what happened was 2 weeks went by, the contractor came in, tested the water, and then sent the report back to DEP saying there was an incident, back on the 25th, and now it's been corrected. Well, the DEP regulations say you have to notify them within 9 days. So technically, there was a notice requirement that we didn't meet. So even though we've been going back and forth with DEP about the fact that the matter was cured within hours, they're sticking to their regulations saying we should have notified them within 9 days. So everyone's going to be getting a letter, which is essentially written by the DEP explaining what happened. The only part of the letter that requires explanation, which is what I just did, it says here, during the 6-month period, January 1, 2023 to June 30th, 2023, monitoring period, our WQP sample results did not meet the optimum WQP value set by the NJDEP for 14 days. And the water system cannot be below the minimum level or outside the range set by NJDEP for more than 9 days. Well, those sentences aren't actually correct, because the system was below minimum for like 3 or 4 hours. It's just that we did not notify them, so if you look at this letter, you're going to say, oh my God, we were not at optimum values for 14 days. That's not true. And we weren't at optimum values for more than a few hours, right? But that's what the letter says. Other than that, I think the letter is fairly self-explanatory. It talks about how we routinely monitor for lead and copper. It says it wasn't an emergency. And another thing which it's not in the letter, but which I'll point out, is that there are two areas where the water is tested. One is actually in the treatment plant. So water comes up from the wells, and it gets treated in the plant, and it gets tested in the plant. And then the water leaves the plant, it goes to various sections of town, and in those spots, the water is also tested. Well, the levels that were too high for the 3 or 4 hours were only in the treatment plant. So none of the levels in the distribution center were, were beyond normal. So it's important to know that, so that any water that was coming into our homes was well within the lead and I think it's copper levels. So I just want to let you know that something we have to send out, and we'll be posting this letter. I mean, everyone's going to get one. We'll post this on the website, and we're also going to post our own explanation, which goes into it a little deeper as to what happened. So this will be posted in the other documents section of the of our website. I think Mr. Kane had something to add.
Just one quick clarification on that. What they do when the company comes in and tests, those reports go direct to DEP, and then that one that came out 0.05 lower in the holding in the treatment center. We didn't know that was a bad test until it came back, and then they test every 2 weeks. So DEP gives you you can't be out of compliance 9 days. So the fact that the 2 testing dates were 2 weeks apart, that's where the 14 days came in. The pump was offline for like 3 or 4 hours, and while they were fixing the pump, they came in the morning, noticed the pump wasn't working, replaced the pump in its entirety. It was tested during that time. It was just a timing thing. Going forward, if the situation ever occurs again, if the testing company gets a bad test, they come back immediately and retest. Here it wasn't for a 2-week period, which created the letter. Our water operator was going back and forth with DEP on this because we didn't think it was a violation because it was never in the distribution system. It was strictly in the tanks, but DEP didn't agree, therefore the letter needs to be sent. That's it.
What was the parameter that was out of specification?
I believe it was it says orthophosphate. As I understand it, and this might not be as technical as it should be, but we put chemicals into the water to keep the lead and the copper levels within reason. So what they're actually testing is the level of the chemical that we're putting in to keep the lead and copper, and that level wasn't as high as it should have been. So there was no indication that there were high lead levels or high copper levels. It was just the chemical that the water company uses, the water utility that we use to control that, wasn't as high as it should have been.
Right, and further tests showed that there was no high lead or copper in the distribution system.
Matter of fact, testing over the past 30 years, it's never been out of compliance.
Yeah.
This was a timing thing. They happened to test the same day we noticed the pump wasn't, and it was strictly in the water treatment center, not in the distribution center had plenty. Yeah, which means is once that water from the tanks would have been through the distribution system, it would have mixed and it would have been fine anyway. And that was the argument with DEP, and they said, no, test. Therefore, our requirement is we need to send a letter. So that's all it is.
And you'll see when you read this letter on the website, it talks a little bit more about the corrosion control and why these chemicals are used in the water utility. So so that's that. Everything is fine. It was fine fairly quickly after the pump was noticed that it was not working. Okay, I'll take a question. Yes.
Question I have, you said that if this happens again by some chance, all right, Claire Hayner, 18th and B. If this happens again by some chance, we're gonna require them to come back and test like immediately. But we still have to notify DEP because there was a problem, correct?
They're sent automatically to DEP. The reports automatically go to DEP.
So why didn't DEP get the very first report that there was a problem?
That's what triggered this. The lab sent it to DEP, which that's what triggered this whole thing, that it was out of compliance
But so the lab sent it,
to DEP.
but they
For
didn't
14
send it
days.
right when they took the first, noticed the problem right away? They didn't
They
send
said
it
the
in?
problem was the company tests every 2 weeks,
Right.
routinely. Comes in and tests the entire system to make sure, they've been doing that for 30 years.
Right,
The report coming back from DEP triggered that one of the levels was below the minimum that they set. That's what triggered this whole thing, and then through investigation, that's when it was when that pump was offline, and it was only in the holding tank, it wasn't in the system. At no point was the system the water ever compromised, because there was plenty of orthophosphate in the system.
yeah, I'm not worried about that, I
Right.
get that, I was just curious, like, when the test was taken, the pumps were already broken, right? And then
At the same time.
all at the same
Like,
time?
we noticed the pump was broke when they came. They work 7 to 3 roughly. They check everything when they come in and when they leave. When they left the day before, the pumps were fine. When they came in the next morning, realized that one of the chemical feed pumps wasn't working.
Okay,
That's when they went to work on it right away, and at the same time, that was the day the company comes in to do the test.
okay, so that test then went back to DEP?
Correct.
But that test didn't show the levels.
Yeah, and that's a trigger this, like it was, the minimum is .02, and,
I think the issue comes to when,
And ours was
probably as to when we
0.15,
fixed the issue.
0.05.
In other words, they could have reported it on that same day, but we never reported back that the
It was
levels came
fixed.
back to normal.
Okay,
So
that's
the
where the
problem.
process improvement
Right,
is.
right.
Okay,
So
that's
they
what I wanted.
reported, they reported on day one, yeah, Belmar had a problem, and then 2 weeks later, when they tested, they said, oh yeah, the problem's not there anymore.
So
But the
even,
problem wasn't there the very next day. So now, when we have an issue like that, if they would have just called the company back the next day, they would have reported to DEP, everything is fixed. And then we wouldn't have had the letter, and
Okay.
DEP wouldn't have, gotten up in arms. But because they didn't report it for 14 days, DEP is just assuming that that condition existed for 14 days.
okay, so that problem will be fixed by getting them in here soon?
Right, right.
Okay, it's all about process improvement.
It's
so-
process, yeah, and that's
Okay,
really the simple answer.
All right.
Because anytime something goes wrong, once we fix it, we need to notify the company that comes in and checks it, and they'll send DEP the notice right away.
my 26 years UPS just kicked back in.
Okay, Okay, council, do I have the council have any further questions? And I think the next item was the Belmar Environmental Commission East recommendations. And I believe-
Let's talk about the geese.
You're the geese person.
I think everyone now in the room has one of these, so hopefully that makes it easier for you. There was also a copy outside of the Environmental Commission's letter with the official recommendations. In full, it is much longer. That's why I also made the one-pager so you can follow along more easily. I'd like to start off kind of backtracking about why this is important. This isn't just about a lot of droppings on the ground near the lake. This is about the overall health of the lake and how that feeds into the ecosystem there. As a lot of people who are frequent flyers here know, I'm going to use a lot of geese puns during this. I can already feel it. We formed a Silver Lake team months and months ago to go into the health of Silver Lake. Silver Lake has had very high nutrient levels, nutrient in the bad way, not the good, for quite some time, as do most of the coastal lakes. But Silver Lake has stood out because it has had a few harmful algae blooms this summer and even late fall. Now, the geese contribute to that. They are not the only reason, and I think it's really important to emphasize that. But any plan to create a healthier Silver Lake, which would include, for a lot of reasons, flood mitigation, and healthier plants, all sorts of great things, has to include a geese mitigation plan. And I think it's also worth noting that Belmar is really the only shore town around here that doesn't have some type of plan in place. So we need one. It's also really important to note that no plan, no matter what we do, is going to get, including euthanizing the geese, will get rid of all of the geese. There are always going to be geese on the lake because geese can fly. The number of geese, and I have this at the top of the one pager because I think it underscores the problem here, the number of geese in North America has increased by 1,500% over the last 40 years. That's 101% per decade, and something like, I'm not great at math, like 10% per year. And one of the problems has been that geese are no longer migrating the same way they used to be. We have resident geese. And geese, once they start laying eggs and creating nests there, they will do that for life, and they will do that for years. So we need a plan that is not just throwing a lot of money to make them fly away for 10 minutes. We need something robust that is also contributing to the health of the lake. So a lot of research went into this, and in fact, I wish I had started it off this way. I wish Mr. Dilberger, because he was part of this, whether he knows it or not. A couple of months ago, he came in with a letter from an article about Edgewater, New Jersey, and how they had euthanized their geese. So we followed up on that. And we called Edgewater. And it turns out that 10 years ago they did euthanize their geese, but they found that not only did that really upset the residents, but didn't actually solve the problem because more geese just came in. So they recommended a great deal of what we see here in front of us. They've seen their geese problem. They're right on the Hudson River. They used to have hundreds of geese. Now they see maybe 20 a year. And that is a reasonable number. So first off, the easy things to talk about are the living shoreline. And that means having a 5-foot buffer, basically, extending from the shore of the lake coming out with varying heights of vegetation. It's really important that that buffer not get mowed. And I know that's kind of hard not to do sometimes. But that allows the geese to not, well, it disallows them from seeing straight into the lake. It scares them. That means they don't want to go in there. They don't want to hang out in that area. And it's also really great for the health of the lake, for flood mitigation, all of these things that are really, really good for us that we need here. Another thing, I'm going to skip the fines because that one's kind of fun. We need, starting in February, really early to start breaking up their nests. That can be volunteers, it can be DPW, that's a conversation. We need egg addling. We need to make sure that we're not having tens of geese born here per goose. So that's an important component here. And then the other fun component are the lights and the lasers. And I keep making Austin Powers references as I talk about lights and lasers. But, one part is LED lights on the lake. Now that sounds scary. These are not super bright lights that are going to disturb all the residents. These are small. There's a picture of them on this one pager. And what Edgewater told us was that it looks kind of almost like a cigar light from a distance. This is not a big deal. And the reason these are important is because the geese sleep on the lake generally. And this disturbs them from sleeping there. They're not going to want to sleep there. They will sleep elsewhere. That is an important step in this process. The other nice thing about them is that they're permanently there. They're anchored there in the lake. And they're solar powered. So this is a one-time investment. They cost about, they're in this long note. Colleen's right here. She did a lot of this research. $3,000, which is not a high price. And Edgewater has all of these processes in place for 10 years. They haven't had to replace these lights. So $3,000, one-time purchase, solar powered. Guaranteed also. We would want, so it's $3,000 total for this system. So I think it was 5 total, 3 on the lake, 2 on the island. 5 on the lake, 2 on the island.
I think it was 3 on the island.
3 on the island, there we go. And these had a 6-month trial period, 2-year warranty, satisfaction guaranteed, money back in 6 months, so it's a really good fiscally sound investment. It also includes the handheld lasers. Now this one would be, the only notation here is that unless it's a cloudy day, this needs to be done at dawn and at dusk, and this is what they look like. Looks like a giant flashlight. There is an even bigger model, but the problem with that model is that it looks like a gun, and having someone wander around the lake with a gun might cause a new set of problems. But this creates a green laser light. And the geese hate it. They don't come adjusted to it. We talked about dogs here in this building. The geese become used to the dogs and they fly away, they come back. They do not get used to this. And you're pointing at them and they fly away. And that's built into our price here with what we're recommending that will be, what the Belmar Environmental Commission is recommending we do. Use of these two processes alone saw an 85% reduction in the number of geese that are on the lake. Yeah. So, yeah. And I keep saying I grew up on duck hunt, so I'm really excited about to do this. And then the other big thing, and this would require council action, is that the Environmental Commission recommended raising the fines. Right now, the fines in Belmar for feeding the wildlife around the lake range from $50 to $500. The Environmental Commission recommended going from $500 to $2,000 for multiple offenses. That is a hefty fine. They recommended having signs around announcing that fine to really discourage people from feeding the geese. Because if the geese are fed, the geese stay. And our goal is to get the geese to leave. That is the short version of this. I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss anything as far as what the Environmental Commission is recommending, but I welcome questions. I'd love to hear things. And I also want to point out that we want feedback from residents. Hopefully the system is good. The living shoreline will obviously take a while to come in, but as we start working with this, we'd love to hear from residents how they're finding it, what they recommend, because that's what we're doing up here. We want to hear from you. So what questions can I answer?
I have a question. First of all, thank you so much, Councilwoman Donovan and the Environmental Commission, Colleen Paulus, for all of your work and dedication on this. I know this has been months and months of research and meetings, and it hasn't gone unnoticed, and we appreciate that it's multifaceted. You know, you're not talking about just one way that is going to be very temporary. I have a question about the lights. Are the LED lights, are they harmful to people or?
No, not at all harmful to people, and the geese don't like them. I'm not quite sure, and maybe Colleen Sullivan's here. You can answer this. I can't remember what the effect is on other animals who are on the lake.
They're exactly geese level, so the other waterfowl or wildlife are not disturbed by them. And geese have particularly sensitive eyes, so it bothers them, and not other waterfowl.
Yeah, and one of the things I also forgot to mention too is that this is the system that's used in all the major New York, New Jersey airports and by the Port Authority. So the big guys are using this system.
I would encourage the council to follow these recommendations as soon as possible, because it seems that this is time sensitive in getting those lights to be used to scare them at this point.
So I have a couple questions, because I do appreciate the Environmental Commission giving us a very, very detailed report. We don't always get reports like these with, with links and references and sources. That's pretty cool. My question really revolves around, the equipment. So is there maintenance for this equipment? Is there a setup? Do we rely on an outside company to set this up and configure it a certain way, or do we just sort of plop it in there on the lake? And B, how do we make sure that it's not going to be tampered with or vandalized or stolen? I guess is another concern I have.
Well, the lights would be anchored in the lake. DEP, unfortunately, would have to set it up, but we are assured that it's a very easy setup. It's an anchoring system, and the Edgewater DEP said he would be happy to talk to you guys and walk you through if you have any questions. And if you don't think it's feasible, that's a conversation we would need to have quickly. But we want to hear that. It's really important that you're involved in this process.
And then does the whole system sort of fall apart if we don't have the handheld unit to go around, because it's, George isn't going to be happy having to get up at the
well, I think that part of the conversation has to happen, and there is another estimate that Colleen worked out, including hiring either a part-time person to be in charge of that, or versus using volunteers. Like I said, I'm happy to volunteer for part of this anyway. I live right across the street. God knows, unfortunately, I am up at that hour. So, I think that is an important question, but I don't think that should deter us from purchasing one of these, especially because they're relatively inexpensive for what we're talking about.
And then, fines are a little scary for me.
Don't feed the geese.
No, I know, and we shouldn't be feeding the geese, and for me, a $50 fine is enough to deter me from feeding geese. I just wonder if is that really the source of our problem? Do we have an overwhelming number of people feeding geese, or is it really just the environmental conditions are so great for the geese to be there because of the grass height and because of the fact that the lake is there, or is it really, is this a problem that really needs to be addressed, or is the fine thing just sort of, are we going to be over penalizing people for a mistake?
Well, I think the proper,
May I?
sure.
Yeah.
Can you hear me from there? Is that okay?
Why don't you come to the microphone? Because there is the streaming portion,
So every expert we spoke with was consistent with the fine aspect. If just one person is occasionally feeding geese, they will not leave, like, period. And Edgewater credits this, this portion of their overall, plan that they have in place as a big part of why they've been successful. So their fine is actually $2,000. And which is what I recommend, staying consistent with what Edgewater is doing, but people on the Environmental Commission felt like that was too hefty, to your point, so we negotiated down to what we're presenting. So it was, I want to say, what did we say, $500 for the first offense and $2,000 for the second offense.
If I got a $50 ticket for feeding the geese, I'm not going to feed the geese again.
Well, enforcing the fine.
That was my question.
That's
Yeah.
the most
Is it
important.
enforced? I mean, have people?
In Edgewater, yes.
No, here. I mean, who's supposed to administer those fines?
So in Edgewater, what they've done in Edgewater is that there is a, very tight cooperation between their DPW and the police department. So DPW, if they spot someone feeding the geese, they'll notify the police department, and the police department puts, the fine in place. So, thank you.
As far as the fines go, I think it can be managed in the sense that if we do the 500, 2,000, obviously we need to do some kind of a notice to the public, like make it very obvious to people that this is happening. Not just put up little signs around the lake, that say, oh, $500 fine. I mean, I think we'd have to have some kind of a program that would, in addition to advising people of the efforts we're making, that we need to really stop the feeding and, really publicize it. It might mean having larger signs by the lake, initially, to really publicize that this is what's happening. I also think that, initially, we may want to, at least if a public works person sees it, give the person a warning in terms of what, I mean, if you have a family with little children and they're feeding the ducks, we don't want to fine that person $500 necessarily, but they should be advised that this is not really allowed. And so I think there's a break-in period, I guess, what I'm saying, and I think if with the proper notice to people, the fine issue really doesn't bother me as much as that, as long as people are well noticed that they can't do this.
I have a question. The living buffer, so that's going to not allow for any pathway to the water whatsoever. Because right now there's quite a few little pathways down to the water.
So if you go down to Avon, they've done a beautiful job on the east side of Avon on the lake, and you can walk around there. There are pathways, they just are curving. So one is a little whimsical and very
Oh, I see
pretty.
what you're saying. There's
Yeah, but there's not a clear path. So that's the distinction we're drawing.
Yeah, and I think the goal initially is to just create the buffer. I mean, we had the buffer last year, and I think it helped to some degree. And it's just doing that, and then I think, again, over time, enhancing that, with
Absolutely.
with proper plantings, making access points that are, within the within the buffer that don't
Yeah.
really break the buffer.
I should be clear that part of the Environmental Commission and Silver Lake team's goal is to get funding to really build a robust one and have environmental architects plot out the proper one and get rid of some of those invasive species that are there and that are on the island, because one of the problems with the island is those, some of those plants are so high now. That island is a perfect nesting place for geese, and that needs to be addressed.
So what is the time frame ideally for that buffer to be like? What if, in a perfect world, I mean, everything takes time, right? So what is the perfect?
So you stumbled upon the major question in some ways, because one of the problems that Silver Lake is now you guys are going to give a very brief history lesson. Silver Lake used to be a brackish lake, meaning it was salt, or had salt. And after Sandy, that pipeline collapsed, broke, was permanently clogged, and never changed back. So that is now a freshwater lake, as much as we can call it freshwater, because the only water going into the lake is either rainwater or the storm water coming in from 18 different outfall pipes, which is another source of not the cleanest water in town. But the problem is that there's been conversation when we talk to all these different experts, either at Rutgers, Monmouth University, the American Littoral Society, about whether or not we should be talking about restoring the ocean lake. That was a huge other can of worms. It would be very, very expensive. It would involve perhaps the Army Corps of Engineers, and DEP, and millions of dollars. But that would also mean that the makeup of the water would change again. And we'd have to build that into any new plantings, because different plants survive based on, yeah, you see where I'm going. But in the immediate, I think plants can be built. Plants can, I'm not a gardener. Plants can, we can start that process now. There are some, we've talked to enough people to know that we can start planting some things now to start building that out.
I love the idea that with the presentation, the letter that we received, that we can put signs around saying Silver Lake restoration is in progress, please excuse our appearance. I think that that part's important so that people know that this isn't something that we're neglecting. In fact, this is something that we're trying to work on in a positive manner. And I think that especially people who just come to visit the borough might be like, oh, why isn't this mowed? You know, our residents too, who might not be informed of the plan, that there actually is a plan. And so I think that will help. The more communication, and like the mayor had mentioned as well, getting the community involved and saying, okay, so if I see a little kid, you know, throwing bread with his mom, I can say, hey, that's a $500 fine. You know, like, put it away, go home. You know, that we can really get the word out as residents that we're working on this. This is in progress. We're doing it together.
I still remember the signs that went up in Spring Lake back in the early 90s that just said, do not feed our feathered friends. And it had information about what bread does to the waterfowl. And that was enough for me. But I also want to say too that the, what did I want to say? That these recommendations, I mean, the Environmental Commission and Colleen Sullivan in particular put so much work into this. It is really, really thoughtful. And the system in general, between the lights and the laser system, can be a really good deterrent. And also that having that deliberate mow line too will make sure that people understand that this part of the lake that we're growing out on this side with this very intentional mow line to make it look neat and deliberate will go towards assuring residents and visitors alike that we're being intentional in our decisions down there.
I have one more question too. I know there's a difference obviously between the geese and the swans.
Yes.
Now the swans do nest every year on that island, and that's like a kind of a fun thing for residents to watch them come back and have their, you know, cygnets. Are they cygnets too? Yeah. So is there a difference, or is that all considered the same with regards to illumination?
I was told that the solar-powered lights will not disrupt other waterfowl, which would include the swans. And the handheld, like it's very precise. So you're just not pointing it at the swans.
And their nests will be not disturbed, her nest every year?
There might, I wasn't researching the swans' mating habits. I know unfortunately too much about geese. So I don't know, I would assume if we're gonna be active on that island, then there might be some impact to the swans. But this is just an assumption based on, you know. So perhaps, yeah, sometimes you don't get to have everything, right? This might be one of those cases, I don't know.
I just wanted to add that, I think the Environmental Commission has done a wonderful job on this, and really is the point of having these commissions is to advise the council on how do we solve some of these problems. And I think this is a really excellent template for other commissions to use if they want to report on things like that. And obviously, I have to thank Colleen for all the hard work that she's put in researching this. And I'm on board with all of the points that are in the letter that she has submitted to us. And I do think that the health of the lake is important. Speaking of the change from salt water to a more of a freshwater lake, I did notice, I'll just pass this along, that if you go in the Historical Society Museum, they have a huge, they have many maps of Belmar, and there's one on the wall which actually shows Silver Lake draining into not draining, but reaching the ocean. And it was after, when all the streets were there and everything, they actually have bathhouses on the sand, and they have a bridge, pretty much where Taylor Pavilion is. So that bridge allows the lake to, overflow into the ocean, or have the ocean, when it's high tide and whatever, drain basically across what's now Fifth Avenue into the lake. So, apparently that's probably the genesis of the pipe, where, when they filled that in, somebody probably said, oh, well, we need to put the pipe here to provide that. Yeah. But I just thought from a historical perspective, it was interesting to see that the lake was fed by the ocean, going back before we paved over Fifth Avenue and built a boardwalk and whatever.
I went back and I was reading the Belmar environmental intake, is that the right word? Mr. Kramer, you were on the one from 2008 and 2020, am I right with that date? You're right. Sure. Oh, I stumped him. But there was a reference in the background for Silver Lake about how they thought there was a chance there was actually underground water feeding into it because Silver Lake doesn't lose as much depth during times of drought as other surrounding lakes. Fun little, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, really thorough presentation, very nice. Thanks so much for all of the information. I appreciate it. Good job, your environmental commission.
Can I make a question?
Sure.
Yeah, I haven't seen any geese by the lake in more than 2 years now. In fact, not geese, excuse me, swans. It's my understanding that the swans have moved out of Silver Lake and have gone to Lake Como because there's no aquatic vegetation that the swans need to feed on. And they actually, I remember Tom Brennan actually had some pictures of the geese marching all the way down the boardwalk to Lake Como. So I'm not sure that swans...
No, she comes back every year. I see her. We take pictures.
They breed at Silver Lake.
They breed, and then she nests. She nests like pretty much all of April and May. She, has her the eggs hatch. They have the little ones, and then they leave. They go to Lake Como.
I'm wondering if when we're talking about building that living shoreline, when we talk to the experts on that, if we can ask for vegetation that encourages swans to stay. Although swans are beautiful, but I gotta say they're not the friendliest creatures, so.
Swans are an invasive species. They're very territorial. I didn't lose any sleep when they left.
She comes back every year. They're so pretty.
It's an invasive species. And the fact that there wasn't sufficient aquatic vegetation is an indicator that, yeah, they may nest here, hatch the eggs, and then take off. Maybe we should just take advantage of that period of time if that's what you want to observe. By the way, yesterday I was down by the lake, and didn't see geese, but saw a brand. And the other thing is that you have to inform people is something may look like a Canada goose, but isn't. The brand do not have any white feathers on their head. That's the main way, and typically they're smaller. But they're a transient bird, and I think that should be encouraged of your part of the Atlantic Flyway here, that when the weather gets tough offshore, they're looking for a place to land and rest and perhaps feed. Regarding Silver Lake in its entirety, the borough can do what it wants, or can do, and has control over the park's property. But the people across the street, they have colonial bent, they have Kentucky blue, they have tall fescue, fresh cut grass. It's like setting a smorgasbord for the geese. If there's no food, the geese, or little food, the geese won't hang here. They'll take off and go someplace else. That's a matter of ground cover control. And I guess the end of this summer, at least at the northwest portion of Silver Lake, by where we have a berm, I did notice that the DPW did cut back on trimming on the lakeside slope of the berm, and the geese were not hanging there, but they went across the street, of course, and we don't have control of that. But there are other ground covers that, by not providing food for the geese. I mean, geese are like any farm animal, whether it's horses or cattle. The food goes in one end, it comes out the other, and they'll be eating full time. They don't take a break in between. And that's going to be the biggest problem. The ground cover can be changed, you can cut back on the mowing, and quite truthfully, there's a lot of mowed surfaces, green turf here in town. I'm not sure that it's appropriate or necessary around the lake. People may like to see everything look like a golf course, but remember, it's parkland. Nature's one thing that perhaps would be better promoted. If somebody wants to play baseball or something, they can go up to Main Street and play at the baseball field there. Just recommendations from my point of view. I'm sorry, I didn't see the swans come back this past 2 years or so, but I have noticed that the ones that I guess that are there don't hang there long. And I'm not sure that they're very aggressive birds, and quite truthfully, they'll dominate and chase the geese out of the water.
Maybe that's the answer. Maybe we should get more swans. I don't know. I agree with everything you said, and I think it just points to the fact that this is going to be a continuing education process, because I agree with you that, the food is everywhere, especially on private property and lawns and whatnot, and I think it's just, we need to just educate the public that, the grasses are beautiful, but,
I will
swans
say,
like it, and so.
for the private residents around the lake, not this one, but there are much cheaper versions of this on Amazon that you can play around with. So, just putting that out there for them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
To your point too, Mayor, the only thing I'd like to see in this plan would be some quantitative measure of success, right? How are we tracking that this is actually working? Are we going to measure, are we going to count the number of eggs that we're seeing prior to addling, and then sort of look next year and see if we're reducing that number, or is it just going to be public opinion on what it is?
Oh, I think that's a really good question. Certainly, counting the geese is an important part of this, and I think counting the number of eggs hatched this year compared to next year is also an important component.
I'd like to see, whether that's done by the Environmental Commission or whether we assign someone within DPW to actually see where we're at now, to establish a baseline and sort of see in a year where we've actually
Well, judging from the text messages I get, I can assure you that the public will be happy to update and count the geese. But yeah, I think that's a really important part. Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, I also think, I thought of this before too. How do you measure success? And you know, one way you could do it is, and you know, obviously you'd probably have to use volunteers, is, in my view, you'd have to have somebody go out on a particular hour every day and count the geese, you know, whether you're looking at, you know, 8, 12, and 6, and then do that for a period of time, count the geese, and then do what you're going to do, and count them again, and that's kind of intensive.
Sounds
To
like
be able
a
to do
wonderful
that,
service
you know?
project.
Yeah, maybe we get high school kids to do that, but I mean, in reality, in my mind, that's really the only way you're gonna, I mean, you can't monitor it every hour of every day, so, I mean, if we chose that, but again, I'll punt that to the Environmental Commission and see what ideas they can come up with to make sure, you know, we can come up with some idea of success. I mean, I also think, though, just the comments from people will also be valuable, because we all walk dogs and whatever, and I think it will be very apparent once we start doing this that there will be less geese, you know. Okay, anything else on geese? Okay. Workshop. There's
I'm
one.
sorry, just one other thing, sorry. It's important that we distinguish between migratory geese and the resident geese. We will always have migratory geese, and they look a little bit different. Councilwoman Donovan just took a picture the other day, you know, of the migratory geese. I see them in Spring Lake, like they're all over. So we're always gonna have the migratory geese. I just wanna keep expectations realistic. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, let's move on. Petitions.
I did not receive any petitions. So can we have a motion to approve the minutes of the December 12th meeting?
Motion?
Second?
Councilwoman Donovan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kinney?
Yes.
Mayor Buckfusco?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rondenaro?
Yes.
Councilman Levis?
Yes.
Reports of council?
Councilwoman Donovan.
Really, I just want to say thank you to everyone. I want to thank DPW, the police, everyone on staff here, and the residents for a wonderful holiday season. We had amazing events, and I look forward to a wonderful new year.
Councilwoman Kinney.
Great, thank you, Mayor. The only meeting that we had was the Shade Tree Commission met on the second Thursday of December, and there was discussion about Piano Plaza, some of the trees in Piano Plaza that need to be moved or changed, but there's also like electric in that plaza. There was a meeting last Friday, the Friday before Christmas, which I was unable to make, but Jim Lonergan from the Shade Tree met with Mr. Kane. So maybe, Mr. Kane, can you give us an update of maybe what happened on that meeting?
Sure. Basically, it was just about what's going to be happening in the plaza, you know, with the work going on with the piano that's going to be placed there. And what they were, you know, a lot of the trees in Piano Plaza are old. So they want to take a look at that whole thing. So I mentioned that we are working with our engineers to figure out exactly where the property lines are, who owns what, and then once we determine that, then we'll be able to put a plan together. But as part of that whole piano project, that whole Piano Plaza area, Shade Tree is going to be involved helping with the design. And then they also mentioned about various species of trees that they have that they want to put throughout town that we're going to be working with too. So it was a general conversation about what's going to be happening in Piano Plaza, and it was a great meeting.
Okay, so that's going to occur over this coming year, we're hoping?
Correct. Well, the piano is scheduled to be delivered the end of February with a grand opening / ceremony the first week in April. Those are loose numbers. The piano is being manufactured in Israel, so we had set to keep that in mind. It's been ordered, and the projected timeline is somewhere at the end of February. Installs throughout March, and then David Sanchez is working on a program how he wants to do a dedication ceremony sometime that first week in April.
So then hopefully the trees and everything will be part of that plan for the grand opening?
Correct.
Great. That's really all I have. Thank you so much also, DPW, Police Department, everybody's hard work this year, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. I would like to take the opportunity also to thank all the members of the council for all the hard work that they did this year. I mean, I think we have an outstanding group of people here, and I think I'm fortunate, and the residents are fortunate, that they've really gone above and beyond, I believe, what they need to do. And you know, we're very, very lucky here in Belmar that we have this kind of cooperation. And also, you know, obviously DPW, the police, our business administrator, our legal counsel who keeps us all, you know, right on the right line here. You know, all of these people work together to keep us, you know, safe, healthy, and do the best for all of the residents. So thank you all. I think we're going to have another great year next year, and Happy New Year, and I'll see you on the 2nd for our next meeting.
Trying to get this thing to stay on. Thank you. Appreciate the cooperation, and I'd like to chime in to thank all of the borough employees and all the volunteers. We have a lot of volunteers and all of our first responders, so thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor. This is the last day to apply for the Anchor program for 2023. That's anchor.nj.gov. Belmar Housing Authority, according to Executive Director Paul DeSantis, the repairs on the main elevator have started and are on schedule. Elevator 2 is now in use. It successfully passed inspection. So as these repairs are made to the main elevator, the second elevator will be used, and that was supposed to take about 7 weeks. The Belmar Public Library had their board meeting on Tuesday, December 19th at 6 p.m. All classes will return to their normal schedule on January 2nd, but you can always check the website for any changes. The first author time of 2024 is January 20th at 10 a.m., and that features authors Jennifer Clearwaters and Cynthia O'Connell. They'll be discussing their book, The Elevation Principles, which gives you the guidance, resources, and support to break free of old habits, hold yourself accountable, and create new pathways for change. Wow, that sounds awesome. A quick reminder that the library is now open on Sundays from 10 to 2 p.m. And please mark your calendars for the Chinese New Year celebration at the Taylor Pavilion. It will be February 15th. As soon as I have more information on that, I will pass it along. Thank you so much. Have a Happy New Year.
Council President Levis.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to start, we had our last Harbor Commission meeting of the year last week. We got a little bit of an update on the fuel dock. I believe at this point the repairs are just electrical in nature, so the dock is stable. We're just, are we still awaiting a contractor to come in for that, Administrator Kane, or are we?
Yeah, quotes for the electrical work.
Okay, and then once the electrical work is done, we should have all the pumps back online at that point. Okay. The other thing I've been up to is I met with several business owners on Main Street regarding the DOT's plan to improve the Main Street Bridge. A lot of them are very concerned with the full D4 model that was proposed by DOT right now. I don't know what the businesses in Avon are thinking, but I know that most of our Main Street businesses, at least the ones close to the bridge, do have some concerns about that. So I think it's important we try to balance the needs of those businesses with the needs of the marine operations that are happening within the river. So I just think it's important we stay on top of it, keep an open line of communication with the businesses so that they know that we'll go to bat for them. You know, DOT is proposing something that's going to negatively impact them and negatively impact our marine operations. So just something to keep in mind for all of you. If you're out there and you're talking to some of these businesses, let's find out what's going to work for them, and let's talk to DOT and make sure that we're expressing their interests loudly. That's all I have. Happy New Year, and thank you to the amazing team we have here.
Okay, thank you. One slight procedural thing that we're going to see today. I asked April that before we vote on ordinances, for example, our ordinances say that the public speaks, and then as a council we should make our comments at that point, and then once we make the motion to do the vote and the roll call, that we should only have votes at that point. I think we haven't had much conversation on votes, but that's the way other committees do it, and it avoids a situation of where, you know, before I vote, I say, well, I'm voting for this because of that, and then the next, I think it's, you know, envisioned that all the comments come out first, so we can discuss them all, and then when we do the roll call, we just do the roll call. So April's gonna lead us in that and remind us of that as we move forward in the year, in case any of us forget, but I mean, that is the procedure, and I think it's cleaner that way, so we all get input on what we're voting on. Okay.
So next, we have public session on the resolutions. If anyone would like to comment about a resolution on the agenda, please step forward, state your name and address. Seeing none, can I have a motion to close the public session?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to approve the resolutions as listed on the consent agenda?
Motion.
Second.
Councilwoman Donovan?
Yes.
Councilman McKinney?
Yes.
Mayor Macafusco?
Yes.
Councilwoman Robinero?
Yes.
Councilman Levis?
Yes.
Okay, next we have ordinance 2023-19. This is an ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 40 Development Regulations, specifically Section 2 definitions. This is open for public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on this ordinance, please step forward, state your name and address.
Mr. Creamer? We'll get you the microphone.
Eugene Creamer, 4th Avenue. Looks like Chapter 40. This is this accessory building structure or use. And this is being modified to add a pool house as an accessible, permitted accessory structure. By the way, I think the pool house, the one in my neighborhood there, I guess, has brought this subject of pool houses to where we are here today. The town has struggled with this sort of thing, not necessarily a pool house, but any accessory structure that contains heat. The one that's being built near, or has been built near me, where I live, it's going to be a heated pool. And the heating equipment is to be housed within the so-called pool house. Also, what I think is being proposed is got some real problematic problems. What I mean, it's problematic trying to keep a toilet with a half bath or otherwise from freezing in the winter. I know even the borough of Belmar, with the piping in the Taylor Pavilion, we've had burst pipes. There's practical problems associated with this. But of course, if somebody's going to install a pool heater to heat a swimming pool, that boiler can certainly heat the whole structure hydronically, I guess is the way you would, not forced air, but hydronically, just put in a valve and additional piping, and there you go. You have a heated, perhaps habitable space. The other thing is, what are the limitations? Is it just going to be the housing of the heating equipment and the pump equipment and the filter equipment for the pool? Is there going to be a bathroom? Is there also going to be a sauna associated with that? I just think that making this a pool house a permitted use is really opening a can of worms. And take my word for it, people are very inventive when it comes to their own property and making improvements on their property and looking for any way that they can do it. I guess there's been established a definition of a pool house, and it does say a pool house is not permitted to have heating and or cooking equipment, nor contain air conditioning, but may contain a half bath with limited hot water capacity. Well, if they're heating the whole pool with hot water, or essentially heating water. Is that to be the remedy here? In other words, that will heat the space that's being used in an accessory building. Just in maintaining it, nobody wants to shut off the heat in their house. We get into the middle of winter, the pipes crack. And like I said, it's been a problem at the Taylor Pavilion. We've had, I don't know how many times, we've had burst pipes down there with the bathroom. Hopefully it seems now that the Taylor Pavilion is being used on a more frequent basis, and somebody will keep an eye on that and perhaps pay to continually heat that building space. Of course, that just spins a utility meter if the building's not being occupied. And by the way, the pool house in my neighborhood there, that pool house actually has its own separate natural gas service. So it's prime for being easily converted into habitable space. And then it goes on here, a deed restriction would be placed on the use of it and so on. Deed restrictions don't work. We've had deed restrictions in this town that essentially just get blown away and forgotten about. The only way that they get enforced is if a neighbor wants to champion the deed restriction, then he has to go out and hire an attorney and bring the matter up in a lawsuit, essentially. These are laws these are conditions. My property has a deed restriction that I can't sell liquor, okay? Likewise, when this Mediterranean project was proposed, that property had a deed restriction that liquor could not be sold there, and that deed restriction was actually put in by the borough itself, and when this came up to discussion with the planning board and the mayor and council, they just blew it away, unless somebody wants to enforce the deed restriction. I guess the point I'm trying to make is, what are we trying to do? Make people, make residents, watching residents in order to enforce the regulations, or in this case here, enforcing a deed restriction. The other, by the way, does anybody have any comments about any of this stuff about the pool house, or making it?
So that's my question usually.
Actually, I did want to interject here that the question of enforcement has come up quite a few times, and I was wondering if council had any thoughts on that, because I would love to hear what you think about that.
On enforcement?
On enforcement for zoning. Because we talk about that a lot, and we talked about it with the keys.
Yeah, I mean, so the intent of this ordinance was to alleviate some of the burden on the zoning board. This was generated as a recommendation from the prior year zoning board. The idea that people can make improvements to their property. We want to allow people to make improvements to their property within certain reason. The planning board worked very hard to make sure that these structures couldn't be utilized as a second living residence, right? So that's the reason there's restrictions on having a heater or air conditioning within those structures. So you can't do that. And I understand your concern about pool heaters, Mr. Kramer, but I can assure you that most people are not utilizing their pools in the wintertime, hence the pool heater needs to be winterized as well. It wouldn't be a viable heat source for any building in the wintertime. So the intent is that these are not going to be secondary residences or back houses or anything like that. It's really just an option for somebody to have a cabana, or I don't want to say cabana, that's a separate definition, but some type of space where they can store pool equipment, where maybe they can have sort of a pop-up space just to have an extra restroom that's near the pool. That's really the only intent of it.
I mean, I'm going to interject. I do think, as Councilwoman Donovan has said, I think the council really should look into the enforcement of these things, because as Mr. Kramer has pointed out, I think, I can get a pool house today and, put a half bath in and a shower, and next year, you know, I'll have a line run and I'll have an air conditioning put in, or I'll have a gas line, you know, and before you know it, I have a stove in there. And I think the question that always comes up, not just for this, but for other things that the zoning board is allowing, is who follows up on that? How do we know that what has been permitted has not been abused in terms of what else has gone on? And I don't have the answer to that, but I think, you know, we'd have to look and explore how do we do that? I mean, I know there are certificates of occupancy when people sell their homes and whatever, but, you know, if you wait for that, you could be waiting 20 years before you go in and see, oh, you know, they've had a heater in here for the last 15 years. So I think it's something that maybe we should, you know, look at and say, you know, how do we follow up on things that are being put as part of conditions, specifically to resolutions and things like that. And, you know, I think it's a valid point. Going back to the pool house, though, I think, you know, the whole idea is it's not to be habitable space. It's really there for, you know, for storage of pool items. And I think the big push is for the toilet and the outside shower, which it doesn't mention a shower, but I think we all realize that that's what's going to go into the pool house, so people don't have to go into their homes. And I'll have a little further more to say once we get to the council person, but you know, your points are well taken.
I don't think the enforcement too is relevant just to this
No,
structure,
no,
right? Any accessory structure, somebody putting up a shed or putting up a detached garage, you could run into the same thing where they're putting.
I think it even goes beyond accessory structures, where people are saying, oh, I don't know, I'm making this up, you know, I'm going to plant a tree, I'm going to plant 2 trees in front of my house, and then before you know it, you know, time goes by and you never see the trees. You know, like who's following up on those things that people are actually swearing to when they're before these boards as to what they're going to do, and then they wind up not doing
Right.
it.
So when the homeowners submit their construction permit, they have to include a copy of the resolution with them, and that's when that gets checked. And then everything has to be in compliance. It's either checked by the zoning officer or the engineer, depending on what type of project it is, and everything is resolved before the CO is issued. The problem is what happens after the CO is issued is another question. You know?
Right.
And there's no way to enforce that without
So that was
going
my
through
question.
everyone's houses and seeing if they've done anything illegal.
It has to be blatantly obvious, right?
Right.
If we see
You
a
don't need a
resident with a
permit, then you
dumpster
never know.
and
Right.
everything's piling up, we know they're doing construction without a permit. So
Right.
it really comes down to enforcement.
Right.
But we can't really, I mean, as a council, we can't
You
enforce.
can't like spot check people's houses to
Yeah.
see
No, I
if
mean, we
they
can-
put into
we
the
can-
legal bathroom or.
Within the bounds of the law, we can create ordinances that do many different things, and obviously I would defer to our council as to what appropriate actions could be taken. That's all I'm saying, you know. So I think that point is well taken. Did you have any other comments?
Yes, the impervious area definition here. I know most of the discussion has been about the pool houses, but this is actually more important than that. The impervious area is the most important problem or component of stormwater management. I think, let's see what's proposed here. Loose stone would be considered pervious and so on. And also it makes reference to what's called pervious pavers. And it makes reference to this, they shall be constructed in accordance with the Interlocking Concrete Paving Institute, ICPI. That sounds like a prestigious organization, doesn't it? I looked into this at one time. The
Interlocking Concrete Paving Institute is owned by one person. So, and it's not a bad specification, by the way. The one person that owns this institute is, look down their name here, Cambridge Pavers. He's been on television for years, and now he's got his two sons working in the business, but it's pretty slick marketing, but other companies have done this before. They create an organization where one doesn't exist and then publish a specification. U.S. Steel did it at one time with their so-called cyclone fence. They publish a specification, and people are steered pretty much to buying their fence from U.S. Steel. Anyhow, I don't really have a problem with the specification, but there's a lot better. The DEP, this should actually be, this business of, especially with the paver systems, Belmar's Chapter 44, stormwater management, perhaps when it comes to people, now here you're coming up with a checklist item that can be used by a zoning board or a planning board. They get an application in, the application is looking for variances, and one of them is impervious cover, and if you exceed that impervious cover limit, okay, you have to apply for a variance. And I guess this is trying to cure all that in one definition of impervious paver, or pervious paver. The other thing about the pervious paver definition here is that it says that you can get credit for 50% of the area that you put pervious pavers over. Well, isn't that 50% number actually arbitrary? In other words, the 50% number was put there because all you had to do was multiply by 2. In other words, if you want to put more paving in, you could use the pervious pavers and double the square footage of paved area that you're going to have in your yard. In any case, the pervious pavers is a fairly complicated, the effectiveness and the usefulness of it as far as stormwater management is concerned is more clearly defined within Belmar's Chapter 44.
If I can just interrupt you for a second, though. The only change to this definition is putting in loose stone and or gravel, and including that as calculated as a 50% impervious. I mean, the other items that you're talking about, which are very relevant, are already in the ordinance. So, our vote today is not going to change any of that. It's just really whether or not we should be adding loose stone and or gravel as calculating that when used, in a driveway or a walkway as 50% impervious.
Yes, so Mayor, really what I'm suggesting here is when you come up with a variance request, when the board comes up with a variance request for exceeding the impervious area limitations of the zone that they're in, that they should mitigate. In other words, if you're asking for something for a variance, the remedy for the variance is mitigation. And Chapter 44 explains that in detail very well. Chapter 44 was mandated, Chapter 44 of the Stormwater Management section of the Borough Code was mandated by the state of New Jersey. In fact, all municipalities are supposed to incorporate it into their borough, into their municipal codes. There's a lot of things coming up now with impervious area and stormwater management. In fact, I read just the other day about the billions of dollars that the federal government is going to make available to handle stormwater management. It's called Phase 3 of the Clean Water Act.
But I think all the comments that you're making now are good comments, but they really need to start, I believe, at the zoning board to bring these comments to them, and then they can, make recommendations to us as to whether or not, the definition of impervious coverage should be changed, whether or not the use of pervious walkways, all of those issues, I think, really start at the zoning board, and, we would then get recommendations, I believe, from them as to what changes they feel are necessary or are not necessary. So, I would like to go on to hear about all of the different standards and things that, should be changed in terms of the, impervious coverage, but we really need to move on.
Mayor, I would just add that you're correct, we're only doing a minor change to this ordinance. However, people before boards have to comply with the stormwater management requirements anyway, and mitigation is a common and standard aspect of any review of a development. There are engineering techniques that mitigate drainage problems, dry wells. I'm not an engineer, however, that's part and parcel of every application.
Okay, that's why I said it's really, not something that we need to weigh in on right now. It's done, those types of issues are handled at the zoning board.
Yeah, nothing we're doing with this ordinance abrogates any part of the stormwater management requirement.
Right. Okay. Do you have any other comments?
No, it's just that I just think it would be just easier here within Chapter 40 when someone is requesting a variance for impervious coverage to point or to refer to Chapter 44, which is stormwater management. There are, by the way, I think there's a lot more flexibility with the stormwater management section of the Borough Code than there is by just throwing this business of pervious pavers into the definition of impervious area.
Okay, well, your point is well taken.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Any other comments? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Sandy Caputo, Surf Avenue. About the bathrooms that we might be putting into Taylor Pavilion.
Well, we're still on the ordinance.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just hold on for a second. We'll get to you. Any other questions about the ordinance?
Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Does the council want to have any comments before we vote on the ordinance?
I just have a question. So we've taken out the idea that this can be a part of a garage as well. They would still need to go and get a variance if they wanted to make a pool house part of the garage.
Yeah, if they were doing a conversion, they would have to.
Okay.
And that's one of the nature of my comment, probably, and that's why I recommended we do this. I'm on the planning board along with Council President Levis, and at the last meeting, we had a vote on this, and I just wanted to explain why I voted no. Because the main reason was I thought that this ordinance did not address the issue of the modification of garages to become a pool house. And I do understand that, from what I heard is that, well, if somebody asks for, a bathroom and a shower in their garage, well, then that's something that they would have to apply. They'd have to ask for a variance, and that, you know, they would have to come before the zoning board, and it seemed like from what I heard was that most likely, if it met all of the other requirements, the bulk standards, the parking issues and all that stuff, that it would be approved. And, you know, my thought was there a way to put that into the ordinance, not necessarily into the pool house ordinance, but somewhere, so that people who want to do that, if it's going to be approved every time, why would they have to put in a variance to do that? You know, if everybody knows that, you know, like my garage, if my garage is in accordance with all of the zoning rules, then I should just be able to put in an application saying I want to put in a bathroom and a shower, and to make it, you know, if we want to call it a pool house, we can call it a pool house. But that wasn't done, and that was the main reason why I thought we should do that. Since then, I also have had some other things, and I'll just throw it out there for the council and whatever. You know, in the interest of making property owners have the ability to do what they want on their property within the zoning ordinances, you know, I'm wondering to myself, why can't I have a pool house? I don't have a you know, a pool, but I certainly, you know, there have been times when I've had many people at my house who've gone to the beach and who come back, and they're, you know, kids especially, they're sandy, and they, you know, they're all over the place, and they're playing in the yard, and they're getting filthy, and, you know, it would be, I think it would be appropriate for me to have a, I won't call it a pool house, let's just call it a backyard house, which would basically permit the same thing, that I could have a place where I could store my beach, you know, chairs and other blankets and umbrellas, and also have a shower and a toilet out there. So, you know, I'm kind of, and I did not bring this up at the planning board, but I'm like, you know, why, and plus, the way this reads, you have to have an in-ground pool to have a pool house. I don't really understand the reason for that. And, you know, if my backyard house complies with all of the bulk requirements, then, you know, my question is, why shouldn't we just create a generic term and call it a backyard house and let everyone, you know, make application for it? And, you know, with the same concern that, you know, it not be utilized as a habitable space, you know, it doesn't have a kitchen in it, it doesn't have heating, it doesn't have whatever. I mean, essentially what it is it's a fancy shed with a toilet and a shower in it. But I think, you know, I think many people in town would love to have that. I mean, you know, even if I'm working in the yard and I'm, you know, I'm all sweaty and whatever, or maybe I have a basketball court in my yard and I want to, you know, I want to shower and everything before I go in the house. I mean, I think that an argument can be made to basically extend or you know, expand the definition of pool house to a backyard house so that all the residents can take advantage of it. Now, how does that affect us here today? I mean, I think there's a couple of options that we could do. We could approve this and obviously go back and pass another ordinance to do that. And that might be the best thing to do. Or we could not pass this today, or we could hold it in abeyance. I'm not sure what, you know, I'd like to just hear what the other council members say. I don't have a problem with passing it, but then I would follow up with the planning board in terms of making, either creating another accessory structure or modifying this. So I'm curious to see.
Mayor, I would just say, you know, because this originated from the prior year's zoning board, and a lot of what they were seeing was based on pool houses for in-ground pools that people were looking for relief on, or looking for variances on. So until, it's kind of one of those things, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If they're not getting those types of applications constantly for people without pools who want to put in this type of structure, then I don't think we need to address it. Now, we hear a recommendation from the zoning board, next year that, hey, this was an issue, this is something that came up a lot, I think then we try to address it. But I don't think it's a problem that they're facing right now. I think we're addressing the most fundamental need, maybe not the need for, existing structures, but, if that starts to become an issue with existing garages wanting to put in some type of pool house, I think that is actually best left up to the zoning board, because those structures are all very different, right? And they might not fit sort of what we've defined as a pool house now, whereas now it's very simple when we're looking at a new structure or a new pool. We've clearly defined what that can be, where it's a little bit muddier when it gets to an existing structure, which is why I think the zoning board is the proper board to hear those types of variance requests versus just approving them willy-nilly. I think this ordinance, the way it's written, allows us to do just that. And then if we do see an issue arising in the future, then we can revisit it.
So just so I'm clear on what you're saying, Council President Levis, is to allow the people who have potential garages that they want to convert to be kind of case-by-case basis with the planning and zoning board.
And that's exactly the way it is now.
Okay.
That's exactly the way it is now. What this does is allows for a new structure to be not having to go to the zoning board, so long as they meet all the bulk standards that exist out there for impervious coverage, for parking. They still have to meet all those standards, but this allows them to not require a variance before the zoning board to do one of those structures.
I don't want to be pedantic, but I literally wrote in our last meeting, why do I need a pool to have a pool house? Which is a joke, but at the same time, I think you do have a point. Like, why are we excluding above ground pools? Why, if the point is to have, we have the world's largest pool right down the street. And I mean, we have an outdoor shower. I hope to God it's up to code. Came that way when we bought it. Mr. Iorio would probably tell me. But I think you've made some good points. I don't know if that means that we should table this and have further conversation about this ordinance. I'm also not here to say that maybe the Environmental Commission's next big job should be talking about pervious and impervious.
Yeah, well, pool, I would assume a pool is considered an impervious structure.
No.
No, it's not. How does the water seep into the ground after it hits the pool?
Well, the pool coping is considered impervious, but the pool water area is not impervious.
Very interesting. We might have to look at that too. I don't know that that's, in my mind, that doesn't meet the definition, but that's just my mind.
Can I just add one thing? Based on my experience with working with zoning and the zoning board, I don't foresee this ordinance coming into play that often,
Right.
because most properties have garages and they want garages, and they're not gonna have the space to have their house, a garage, and a separate pool house. So I don't think it's doing what the zoning board wanted, because they wanted, the applications they saw were adding a pool house to a garage. So I don't see this ordinance coming into play that often. People are still gonna be going to the zoning board because they're gonna wanna put an addition on their garage to have the pool house attached.
So maybe my concern is we need something else to help the zoning board to deal with the people who are gonna be coming, who wanna put in, and I hate calling it a pool house because it's not a pool house. It's an extension to their garage, basically to have a toilet and a shower. Because, we all store stuff in our garages as is. So, the only difference is that we're saying, well, you need a pool to be able to do that. And then I go back to my other argument is, why can't I just have a toilet in my garage now without a pool? If it meets all of the other requirements, is that...
And that comes up a lot in the zoning board applications where people talk about garages all the time and, are there gonna be utilities? Is it gonna be heated? Is it gonna have air conditioning? And then they'll say, well, I would like to have a toilet there or a sink. And we're like, well, no, it's not permitted, so you can have a hose spigot to rinse, but that's it. There aren't a lot of requests for a
So
half hour.
variances have not been traditionally
No, they've given some, more like when it's involved with a pool. But there have been cases where people just want to have.
Yeah. See, that's what bothers me in the sense that, it's been given to some, but, what's the criteria? It'd be nice, I think, if we had a straight line, like, if your garage meets this, and this, then you can do this. Rather than having this, well, this person got it, but I don't know why I didn't get it. It just seems like more work for the zoning board, and it just seems to me that if we're going to allow a separate structure to have a bath and a whatever we're calling it here, half bath, then why wouldn't we let an existing structure have a half bath? And maybe that's a further discussion with the zoning board. So, maybe I've talked myself, 360 degrees. And maybe we should just move forward with this and then, deal with the issues that I have. I think council wants to weigh in on this.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to add that this is the last meeting of the year, so if we table it, we'd have to reintroduce it next year. So we can't table the second reading, we have to start all over again.
Okay, I'm okay with moving it, taking a vote on this now. And we can always deal with the other issues next year. Okay.
That's it? Okay, can I have a motion to adopt ordinance 2023-19?
Motion?
Second?
Councilman Donovan?
Yes.
Councilman McKinney?
Yes.
Mayor Buckafusco?
Yes.
Councilman Rondinero?
Yes.
Councilman Levis?
Yes.
All right, now we have public session. Anyone would like to speak, please step forward, state your name and address. Come on up, Sandy.
Thank you. Again, about the Taylor Pavilion. The plan is to maybe install bathrooms in there because we don't want to put up those other two non-compliant trailers back.
Well, kind of, sort of, but really the goal is to create a permanent bathroom on the boardwalk. And since we have the space to do it in the Taylor Pavilion, we would do that, and that would take away the 6th Avenue bathroom because it's only a block away. And that's really the genesis of all of this. So we're eliminating one of the temporary bathrooms and putting in a permanent bathroom, which could possibly be open year-round. Because right now, the temporary bathrooms need to be removed by, October 1st, the law. So, it would be an enhancement for people on the boardwalk to have a year-round bathroom there if we decide to keep it open year-round.
Okay, aren't all the other trailers non-compliant or are they compliant?
Well, it depends on what you mean by non-compliant. The trailers are compliant, it's what they're sitting on, it's not compliant. So it's a thing where we're still working on that, but basically non-compliant means DEP is not in favor of us having these bathrooms sitting on what they're sitting. Now there are other engineering things that could be done to make them compliant, using your term, and we're looking into that too, and we would have to deal with DEP and getting approval to do that. But yeah, I mean the bathrooms are fine. It's just that what they're sitting on is not fine. And they would like us to have, the bathroom, it's all for storm reasons. In other words, they don't want, like if there's a big storm right now and we get some kind of a notice, DEP has to go and remove those bathrooms. It could be the middle of the summer, and they have to take them off the beach, and then after the storm, they have to put them back. So, it would be nice to have a situation where we could put those bathrooms on, a different, whether it's pilings or whatever, so that we can keep them there. I don't know if we would keep them year-round or whatever. I mean, that still remains to be seen, but that's what's the non-compliant part.
Okay. What I was wondering is why are we worried about those two when we're going to put the other 5 back?
It's not a matter of being worried about it, it's just we have the opportunity
Yeah, okay.
to do that. If we had an opportunity someplace else, we'd be looking at that too, and, we're constantly thinking about, how we might be able to put permanent bathrooms, along the boardwalk. So, that's something we just keep looking into. But we have this opportunity right now, we have the space, it's a perfect location, and again, it would give us an added feature to the boardwalk year-round if we decide to keep it open, instead of having the porta potties out on, on Ocean Avenue. It'd be better to have a permanent facility.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Mr. Mayor, can you also clarify, because this only came up in the last meeting, will there still be concessions at Taylor Pavilion?
Right now, we're planning on that.
So even with the addition of the bathrooms, there would still be?
Yeah, there'll be plenty of room still to have a small concession.
We have to put that out in the bid soon?
Well, I don't know when we're going to do it, but it would have to go out to bid. Once we finalize the engineering, I think, and we know pretty much, the square footage of the space and whatever, it's only fair to people who are going to be looking to rent it to tell them this is the space, and not surprise them, in May and say, oh yeah, we cut another 6 feet off of here, So, that's the only thing that would be holding it up.
Okay, thank you. And about people feeding the swans and the other waterfowl, I've been observing my Lake Como for many years. I would welcome law enforcement doing something. Any suggestion ever by me to someone feeding the waterfowl is met with usually things I can't say into this microphone. It's terrible. So I would welcome law enforcement, come by, explain you can't do that, come back in 5 minutes, if they're still doing it, write them up.
Well, we would have to coordinate with Lake Como, obviously, in terms of the ordinances and whatnot, but it's definitely doable if they're in agreement.
Okay.
I'm curious to know if anybody's ever gotten a ticket in town for feeding. Do we know? Do we have the statistics? Officer, has anyone been fined? I'm curious. I don't know.
My guess would be it would be in conjunction with something else. How it is, it'd be like somebody's running into the lake or doing something else that's not, proper, and then they see that they're feeding, and then they just tack that on. I don't think it would be a primary offense, but it is a good question.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Claire
No
Hanger,
phones
18
allowed at the...
Claire Hanger, 18 TV. First off, thank you very much for the presentation about the geese. And a suggestion that I made quite some time ago is if we have a workshop, let's put it that we're going to talk about something, especially something that the public has been very, very upset about for many, many years. Let's put it on the agenda, okay? And let's even advertise it a little bit like we advertise everything else, like, hey, we have a potential solution here. Come to this meeting instead of all the other meetings where everybody's, complaining. All right, so food for thought. Thank you very much, Mr. Kane, for the update on the piano in Piano Plaza, because I read an article last night in Tap Into that said BAC is still looking for funds to make this possible. So that kind of sounds like that's false information, so thank you for the update on that. And I guess the prep work and everything will start soon. Okay, that's good. Grants. A while ago I asked if we could possibly carve out a piece of the website, I know the website's being redone, or have a workshop, a quarterly workshop. Here are the grants we're working on, here are the potential ones we can get, here's what we've gotten, here's where we are with them. Just an update for what's going on.
Yeah, we can do that, definitely.
Okay.
Yep.
And last but not least, my probably 6-year plea of curbs for the handicap, okay? I know, Mr. Creamer, you have an area, there's one other block aside from 18th and Snyder, all right? I was at the zoning meeting last night with the high hopes that the house that's being built on the northeast corner would have the curbs, but there's nothing that says that they have to, I believe, unless maybe the sidewalks are done, April?
Actually, since our engineer is in the room, he was the person I was going to talk to. So the homeowners are responsible for replacing curbs and sidewalks and maintaining them. But if you're on a corner property and you replace your sidewalk, are you required to make it ADA compliant with the curb cut for the wheelchairs? Do you know the answer to that question?
So,
Oh, you have to come on up. Come on up. We got to get this on record here. No.
Hi, good morning. Jim Morris, Remington Burnick Engineers. Excuse my appearance. I was out in the field this morning. So to answer your question, the borough is really the responsible party with regards to the ADA compliance issue. So if a borough resident is required to upgrade their sidewalk, then the borough and that resident would have to have a conversation about the ADA compliant issue, because the curbing, and it's actually not just the walkway, it's the curbing needs to be at a certain flat area so that there's no slope to it, and the ramp up, which is not sidewalk, would need to come into play as well, because the sidewalk is different than that little piece of concrete between the curb. That's called curb ramp. So, and then there's also a requirement that there be a detectable warning, which is they're usually red with little raised domes. So it's a little more complicated than can we make the resident do it, but it's something that we can look at to see how we can better address this issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll be here for when that ordinance goes into place. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, please? Come on.
Good morning, still. Sharon Mahoney, 800 Main Street. First of all, thank you, everybody, for this year. I know everybody worked really hard to try to get, kind of rein in some issues that were happening, as last year unfolded, as last year ended. And there's been a lot of contentious meetings, but I think you guys have done a great job of trying to rein those in as well and try to get down to calm discussions about the issues. So thank you for that. Maria, Councilman Rondinero, you mentioned the Anchor program. So just in case anybody's wondering, I went through an issue trying to get information on my parents because I manage their finances, and I could not get any answer. You go to the Anchor program, and they say, we have nothing on file. Then I go to file, you've already filed. So I was in that death circle. So what I did was I reached out to someone in Keene's office. They had a backdoor relationship with the Anchor program. She reached out to get some answers from me, but I also emailed through the inquiry form on the Anchor website, and I actually got conversations that way. So I tried both avenues, so I actually was able to get it resolved through the email conversation. It took a couple weeks, but they at least got the answer back to me. So if anybody is having issues, just probably email, through the Anchor website, or even contact Keene's office. I know today's the last day, but if, let's say, next week you still haven't gotten a check, follow up that way. So I just want to put those recommendations out there. Regarding the wildlife on the waterways, I've been a huge pusher for signs for quite a while now. So I know there's one that's there, and I think it's not in a really good spot at Silver Lake. Where they feed them is at that platform. So the signage should go there, what the fine structure is, and there's no tolerance. It's first, and I think part of the issue is, people like Sandy mentioned, people like us walk up and say, hey, you're not supposed to feed, and they get, they want to get in a fight with you, or basically, again, gestures and words and stuff can't be said here, but if the signage is there, says this is the fine structure, and then also if it's up to the police department and DPW to monitor that, they have to do that if we're not getting results, because we can't find the people. So we do need cooperation from those departments to be able to do that. And I don't think that that's been a real push, because this discussion I don't think really has happened at this level. So I have no issues with those fine levels. I think they're great. And the fact that the signs that say, please don't feed our wildlife, and here's why, and educate them to say, this is why we don't want you to feed them. How bad bread is for ducks and everything, and what happens to the water and what happens to the fish, because that stuff's in the water, the poop in the water, all of that stuff. And then maybe have not a QR code because you have to pay for those, but a website they can go to Could be our website that has information on that. Hey, here's more information, you can go here, for kids especially want to learn that information. So that's just a suggestion. I have a couple of questions. One's regarding transparency and responsive to emails. So I sent an email a week ago, crickets. So it's regarding the EV chargers. So I don't know if anybody's responsible for responding to emails about these things, but I mean, that conversation could have happened on email, yet I'm now here talking about it, wasting people's time. But it is a concern. Are we doing anything about adding EV chargers to Belmar?
I would personally love to see that. I know that there's some grant programs available, Lake Como has one. I'd like to see how that's been working for them.
I'm sorry I didn't respond to your email, but I was curious to know if that was going to be in part of the transportation, NJ Transit part of their project with the 484,000. That was my other follow-up questions of that.
I thought that was only for the train station, like section right
That's
there.
not the parking and the walkways and the lighting and the.
It's all of that, yeah, but we can look into EV charging.
Yeah, we can look into that.
Yeah, because the three areas I suggested, just to repeat for the folks listening, are the Marina area, Belmar Plaza, and a couple places on Ocean Avenue. Because we do have 1.3 miles, right, stretch there, so one at one end, one at the other end. There's, because of the push by the governor, or federal, whatever, for, electric vehicles, the problem people have is finding those charging stations. And you have one on Premier Outlets, but a lot of times people leave them, and they do take a while to charge. It's not, because I'm looking for a new car right now, and I'm like, do I get an electric vehicle? Because I don't have any place to charge it, unless I put maybe a charger at my mom's house, because you can do that, put them at, at your homes. But I think that should be a serious discussion, starting in the new year.
I was just going to say, we started having that conversation too when we had our first Sustainable Jersey meeting as well. if I recall correctly.
It's definitely something that's coming.
Yeah, and the grant
And
writers
we'll
were
be,
here for that, so.
we'll be dealing with. I know most people have chargers at their homes. I would recommend anybody who gets an EV car have one.
I don't have a house to do that, so a lot of people
I
do.
also know that when you buy a car, you get a booklet with all of the EV stations that are in the area, and I know there are a few, but they're not really local
Target?
to here.
Does Target
you know.
have?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few out there.
And-
Yeah. Then there's also Tesla-specific ones too, that are only for Tesla, of course, right now.
And fortunately, I understand that when you start up your car, they tells you pretty much how many miles you can go, before your battery is out of power. So, I mean, it is good in the other sense that, people can come to a restaurant and they know they're going to be in there 2 hours. They can put their car on the charger and charge it, for that time. So there's benefits, obviously. We'll be looking into that.
Okay. Speaking of the marina, are they going to pave that lot at any time? The one that's sort of right across from
The dirt
Marina
lot?
Grill? Yeah.
Yeah, there's no plan to do it right
Okay.
now.
Just curious, because you could also
It's more of
charge.
a
Discussion on
impervious that way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the discussion
we don't want
on
to create more.
the chargers did come up at the last Harbor Commission meeting too, so
Okay.
it's something that there's some interest in having possibly the marina. And as the mayor mentioned, not really for residents, so to say, but for
Tourism.
tourists who are coming in. There's a lot more electric vehicles than there used to be.
Right.
So it is.
As we're talking about pervious too, I've been going around town and I noticed that, there is a lot of spots where there's impervious coverage. And I think, one of the things that we should as a council is start looking at that. And in conjunction with that is also involves the planting of trees. Because trees will also help, flooding in the long term. And, I think it's important that we do what we can in different areas. So, I think we need to start shying away from public lots that are paved and see if we can come up with some other solution to make them more pervious, so we're not, just taking rainwater and running it into the lake, for example. So,
Make a comment?
yeah.
The dirt parking lot in the marina is not allowed to be paved.
That's fine.
According to the DEP, it has to stay.
What is that?
Can you park there for free?
Yeah.
Because that's not a charging, that's not a lot where you have to pay station. Okay.
Right, that's right.
But we could make that a park, maybe. I can think of ways to do it.
You like
I'm
Asbury
just
Park,
kidding.
right? Yeah.
I'm
Charge
just-
for everything. All right, two more issues regarding 8th Avenue. So in the CoStar article yesterday, I was a little confused. What are we doing with the crosswalk up right by 10th Avenue Burrito and BHA. So they said it's being moved.
The state is doing that.
Okay, so do you know the details? I think it sounded like
I
they're
have
moving
exact
it.
details, but the only big detail that we don't have is when they're gonna start.
So they're eliminating that, and it's gonna be at Main Street, is that what?
No, it's gonna be moved down closer to the driveway going into Piano
Okay.
Plaza.
Okay. And there'll be like lights and,
Yeah, the
yeah,
whole
which will be
nine yards,
good
yeah.
because
I think
so many people
we
don't
have it
stop
on
at the
the,
common.
did we put it on the website? I think it might be under other documents or the plans. If
Okay.
not, we'll put it up there.
All right,
And that's got tie into that grant also.
Yeah.
Along that same area.
okay. And what about, which I've asked before, the striping on 8th Avenue at Main Street and the walk signs and
That's
signals?
that's all part of the state. That's state.
So we just don't know the timeline on it? Okay, okay. So, I'm sorry, I think it's closed. Yeah, it's closed. Yeah. So suggested, and this I was gonna bring up too, like if there's a way on the website, I know, Donovan, I'll be on that committee, is putting a status on the website for projects like this, so people don't have to come up here and ask every council meeting, what's going on with this, what's going on with this, or send emails, like, there's a status on the website that says, here we are with this is, we got the grant funds, money for this, we got grant money for this, we have state money for this, so just to give them, and I know your newsletter goes out every couple weeks or once a month, but if people have a static place to go for that information, that would be great.
We also have the minutes from the meeting.
Twice a month.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
We
yeah,
also
once
have
or
our
twice a
minutes.
month, yeah. So I think, again, information overload is not a bad idea. If you have a central location for it, people can go, oh, just go to the website, the information's on there, and it gets constantly updated. And then regarding the, back to the wildlife stuff, I think social media is really important for communicating. It's John. Yeah, that John. Really important for communicating and educating when we're going to put this program in place for, hey, don't feed the wildlife, and here's the fine structure. And no tolerance, just like no tolerance for noise, et cetera, and put the signs not just in one spot, but like around the lake wherever people might access those locations to feed, because they can't access where there's all that tall grass, but like any place else that would be an access point, right? And then working with Spring Lake Como on the Lake Como one as well, because I don't think there are many signs around that lake either. So, it's a two lake effort here to get it covered and communicated, and anyway, so that's it. Happy New Year, everybody, and thank you for everything.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Can I have a motion to close the public session?
Motion.
All in favor? Okay, so next we have a resolution authorizing closed session. This is a resolution that says, whereas it has been determined by the Borough Council of the Borough of Belmar that it is necessary to discuss the following matter at its regular meeting in the absence of the public, which is pending or anticipated litigation regarding affordable housing and the attorney-client privilege communications related thereto. Whereas the Open Public Meetings Act permits the Borough Council to exclude the public from that portion of a public meeting during which such matters are discussed. Now therefore be it resolved by the Borough Council as follows: the council shall forthwith recess into a private executive session from which the public shall be excluded to discuss the above referenced matters. That the scope of the aforesaid executive session shall be limited to the above matters as stated. That those matters discussed in executive session shall remain confidential until such time as the need for confidentiality no longer exists as determined by the borough attorney. That minutes of the closed session shall be taken and kept free from public review until such time that the need for confidentiality no longer exists as determined by the borough attorney, and that the regular meeting of the Borough Council shall resume after the private executive session, at which time the Borough Council may take action in reference to the topic discussed. Do we have a motion to approve this resolution?
Make the motion.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, Councilwoman Donovan?
Yes.
Councilwoman McKinney?
Yes.
Mayor Buckafusco?
Yes.
Councilman Rondero?
Yes.
Councilman Levis?
Yes.
Right, so we're going to go into executive session, and then after that, we will come back out, and if there's no business to be taken, then we'll just